Hey everybody, I know I don't make many videos, haven't really been making too many videos, but I've been playing a lot of Minecraft. I've been doing a lot of stuff, and one thing that I've been doing a lot of is terraforming. I really like terraforming. It's something I really like doing. In the background, you can kind of see one of my recent projects here. And on the server I play on, it's called Acorn. It's really fun. Some people have shown some interest in learning a little bit about that process, or at least I've shown some interest in making a video about how I kind of go about that process. And I thought it would be kind of a fun thing to experiment with today. So there's not a lot of ground rules for terraforming. It's really an artistic thing, just like any other thing in this game. There are some things that I really like to keep in mind sometimes. It's really three main bullet points. Bullet point one, you really want to be working with nature in your builds. You're not trying to work against it. You're not really trying to completely make your own thing. You're trying to connect different parts of the world that already exist in a new way that capitalizes on your own skill. Number two for this would probably be that natural, quote unquote, natural, things looking natural, doesn't necessarily mean that they look natural in terms of that they're automatically generated by Minecraft, or they look like they would have been generated by Minecraft's natural generation or something like that. It's really just, does it look like this would be supported in the real world? Is this something that could exist in the real world in some capacity? And the third thing is really to just let the haze take over. And I use this term a lot sometimes, especially when I'm teaching students. The haze is basically the essence of creativity. And let me go somewhere else to explain exactly what I mean by that. So the haze, in essence, is really just a way to talk about shifting what you're doing while doing the thing that you're doing. So in music, in writing, in Minecraft, in all kinds of creative pursuits where we're actively, changing things as we go along and making something, the haze is just a way to talk about how your priorities are shifting while you're creating the thing. Imagine you're building a wall to a house and you realize, oh my gosh, I can change this wall 3 blocks this way at this point, and this unlocks this new interesting opportunity for like a second floor addition to this house. Maybe that's a relatable experience to you. Then you've already experienced what I mean by the haze. As you're creating your project, your terraforming thing, your building, your whatever, you are changing your priorities just a little bit as you're going along to better kind of facilitate that creative project. So use the haze. Don't think, this is my idea for a project, this is how it's going to be, and if I don't make it exactly like this, I will have failed. It's a really bad mindset to have when terraforming, especially because you're really playing into the natural world. And you need to be kind of adapting what you're doing as you are changing the environment itself so that your changes can look like they're integrated into the environment. That might have been a long-winded explanation for something very simple, but I just want to say that. I think it might just be more helpful if I go over to a different kind of project area and maybe just give you a little bit of a different explanation as to how I changed an area kind of using that concept. So here's an example of a project that I just finished recently. It was this land bridge here, as well as these few islands over here, and this, underwater passageway through it. I still haven't finished a lot of stuff in here, but the point is, this was once a ravine that split this landmass in kind of 2 chunks. This part here, kind of from this point all the way over to about here, really just kind of sloped up into nothingness where that ravine came over. And so when I was thinking about what to do with this ravine, I ended up starting from this side and just covering it, taking the land here, flattening it a little bit here, bringing it up a little bit, lipping it up, so that the ravine, as it started here, because it was filled with water from this ocean, was covered here. And then when I came here, and this, sloped away again with the curve of the ravine, I was thinking, oh, well, I could just completely flatten this area and connect it again with the water, so that we could have kind of 3 different connections to this area here. So none of this actually was my initial plan. I was just trying to actually make a cliff along here, but connecting it up with the landmass that initially was here actually really helped it become something really unique and something I haven't really done before. With connecting this part over the top, it kind of just fell into place that I should have a bridge over here to this landmass. None of this was here initially. Again, this is all another terraforming project because this was pretty flat. But I needed a way to blend in the terrain, and so I kind of made it step down a little bit here. As you can see here, this actually hasn't all fully healed yet, and this will be an expansion of this town over here when I can do that. But that's just an example of one such way that the haze actually really dictated the outcome of a project. It wasn't just, I'm going to clear out this area of the terrain and make a cliff here, a cliff edge. It was, oh, now I can cover this part. Ooh, now I can make this entrance part. Oh, wow, now I can actually make this go into the ocean and make this land. The project pulled me along. I was not really making the terms of what I wanted to do. Sure, I was kind of dictating, this is the slope of this land bridge and this is what I want this to be made of. But this was not my initial plan. This was not my initial plan to connect up these sections like this. But it worked out really, really nicely. And I'm really excited to kind of show you another way to do this, potentially in your own Minecraft world. So let's go check that out right now. All right, so step one of this entire process is to establish the bounds of your project. So you're gonna wanna choose something that makes you work with the landscape, not necessarily something that completely overhauls the landscape unless you're really experienced with this kind of stuff. And don't just look at only subtraction or only addition, like just adding something to the terrain or just taking something away from the terrain. You're going to want to use both techniques to make your build and your terraforming look as integrated with the terrain as possible. So unfortunately, I can't show you the official project site for this tutorial because I started that a little bit. I got to like step two or three. Without you guys. But this is a pretty analogous structure, pretty close to my base, where I kind of had this natural bowl in the mountain. And I was thinking, I could really remove this, give it a little bit more breathing room. Imagine this is actually the corner of the mountain, and kind of make it viewable from like 2 different sides, 3 different sides of the mountain, instead of just this one kind of section. So that would be my project. I would be like, okay, I'm going to flatten this area a little bit. And then, alongside that, I think I'm going to make it accessible for people to walk around. Maybe I want it to be maybe a bigger attraction in my city. So I'm going to actually make it a kind of peninsula. I'll make it kind of like a precipice, a big arm that kind of reaches out from the mountain, maybe projects out a little bit, has a little bit of a curve in the support for it, and kind of tapers off to a point, kind of like Minas Tirith, or whatever that city is called from Lord of the Rings, with the giant pathway leading off into the abyss, where the king throws himself off after he catches on fire. So those are my project bounds. And that's what I would do. I would just start rough draft, absolutely hacking away at the terrain, just removing this part of the mountain, and that would make the rest of the project work. I've already done step 1, I've already started, and that means I can continue. So step number 2 is to create your base plane. What I mean by that is that it's not the final floor area or anything like that. It's really just a first draft run about how your project might look like from above, like from a map, kind of from like a dynamic map view, anything like that. In this case, since we're doing kind of like a flat protrusion from the mountain, as you can see, I've already removed this part of the hill here, like I was alluding to in the previous step. And I've built out this base plane of dirt. You can kind of think of your base plane, whatever you want to do, as an apple. Cutting it from the middle versus from like really close to one of the stem ends, right? With the middle, you get the biggest kind of widest plane. And that for us, since we're wanting to make it walkable, we're wanting to make it something that people would actually be able to experience for themselves, we're making it flat on the top. So that is our base plane. That's our widest point. Again, this does not mean that our top will be completely flat for all eternity. This is really just the rough draft kind of prototyping step of all of this. I use dirt for this stage normally, as it's going to have grass on the top itself to kind of get it a head start on spreading the whole way. I'm going to want it there eventually, so why not do it now? Am I right, boys? Now, step 3 is actually the final one that I did before throwing on the recording. So you get to see me do all the rest myself. But this is drawing your core lines. Remember, this is a peninsula. I kind of want to have this curve going from the top kind of down into the mountain where it's going to be supported. But at the same time, you know, planning out that curve all on its lonesome is kind of difficult. And especially if you're not experienced with this style of terraforming, it might be something pretty daunting that you don't really want to do all on your lonesome. So draw core lines. It's really, really, really helpful. I normally make them out of stone. And basically all they are is 2 or 3 or just like a really, really low handful of lines that are going to be kind of the main features of your build. This doesn't mean that they're going to be on the outside. This doesn't mean that this will be like anything that the players in this world will actually see. It's just something to help you as a guide. So here, to make that curve, think of it like a graph, and you want to make all these tangent lines alongside a curve. Maybe that doesn't make sense. I'll try to throw an image on the screen of what I mean right now. But if we line up this kind of like that, you can imagine it like an exponential curve or a tangent curve on a graph. And we're using straight lines to kind of match that as closely as possible. So then, as you can see, we kind of had this idea of a curve already forming without us really doing much. I chose tangent lines that are pointing in towards the centermost point of this mountain, you know, the center of mass, to give it the biggest idea of it actually, you know, being supported, you know, something cantilevered out like this, actually really being supported by some really hefty weight behind it. And I also did one kind of pointing straight down, because if it was just like this, it might be a little bit too unbelievable that it's actually just being supported on its own, that this wouldn't have eroded away or fallen off, especially if there's foot traffic on the top. So I really wanted to have kind of more of a beefy base. If we wanted to make another core line, I would say another good one would be like from right about here, the center of mass of this peninsula thing, this cantilevered bit, straight down into the ground, potentially meeting up with this one even, to give it, you know, that final vertical, this is where we are meeting the earth. And that gives actually the idea that all of this will be stone. So we can see what happens, what the haze kind of dictates as we move on into this project. I'm eager to move on to step 4. Let's get right into it. All right, so I'm in my storeroom. I have just stocked up on a whole bunch of dirt and stone. Again, this might actually not be enough for the project, but we can always come back and get a little bit more later. The only reason I don't have more right now is because I'm kind of frighteningly low on stone. This is my main stone chest, and I've only got a little bit left because I've just been doing a bunch of terraforming projects. So let's get right back into this one, and if I have to mine some stone, I'll have to mine some stone later. All right, everybody, now for step 4, which is building the underside of it. We're gonna step away from the core lines for a little bit and use our supporting blocks, in this case stone, to cover the underside of our platform. You can cover the whole thing if you've got the blocks for it and want to minimize your hollow areas that you'll have at the end, or you can just go around the edge. And I think that's what I'm going to do here. Kind of imagine every single dirt block that currently exists as needing at least one piece of stone underneath it to hold it up. I know it's Minecraft, it's a block game, it doesn't really matter. And even though dirt might generate on its own in regular Minecraft without stone under it, there's an example right there. But again, like I said before, natural does not necessarily mean completely natural, completely like it would generate in Minecraft. And we're not trying to make it look entirely natural. So in this case, every supported block must have at least one supporting block underneath it. So I will go ahead and do this for the whole thing. There is a way to make a future step faster and do that now, but I'm just not going to do that right now and just do this. So I will see y'all in just a second. All right, y'all. So as you can see, I've gone ahead and filled in every single block on the edge with stone that we had placed as part of this big reaching cantilevered object here. So let's move on to step 5, which is actually meeting our core lines to this new underside layer. We're just going to do a couple lines of this. We're not going to do the whole thing, just a couple, and try to go in a pattern where you're kind of emphasizing randomness a little bit. It's kind of hard to explain what that looks like without doing it. So I've got a little bit more stone in my inventory, and I'm going to take this core line right here and just connect it just up like that. We can go around and do this whole thing. Maybe I will fill this in a little bit to get it over here. But then as soon as this is matched, we can move on to another area here. As we're kind of going towards the mountain, we want this to curve down, as you'll remember. So we need to be emphasizing that curve as soon as possible by getting in this second layer kind of sooner than we already had it. So let's build in a couple blocks here, get something supporting this edge just a little bit more. And as you can see, you're like, whoa, you're getting really far away from your core line here. And yeah, the core line really isn't something that's going to stay exactly there. It's going to change, it's going to evolve. It's just to help us get a better idea of what we're doing, just so that we can get the blocks down. Keep in mind, y'all, just like in reading, just like in writing, just like in making music and practicing anything, Minecraft is the same way in that you got to just do it. You got to get something down, and that will help you get your future material out the door. It's hard to explain if you've never, forced yourself to do that before, but really just make things. And as you make things, the things you make just keep getting better. So I'm going to keep going around and linking this up, keeping in mind that this is another core line that we need to be linking up. So I'm going to beef up this just a little bit more, maybe bring this down a little bit as well. Maybe even meet it there just for a second to get a taste of that structure, coming through and really melding with these core lines here as it comes down. So already we're kind of getting this structure that looks a little bit random. And what I mean by random is that, this thing does not appear over here like these things do. As it kind of goes up, it makes a little bit of adjustments in terms of its symmetry and the angles that you can kind of see it from. So I'm going to continue by bringing this side down just a little bit. Again, remember, I'm not saying do a ton of layers, like go all the way down, but just a little bit up here to get you going. Especially when you go towards existing parts of the world, maybe over here, you want to just directly link this stone, with the ground. You don't want to see it being supported by dirt. This will turn into dirt because that doesn't look, quote unquote, realistic. It doesn't look like it could be supported like that in the real world. So wherever that happens, you want to replace it as far down as you can see. So where the stone, ostensibly disappears behind the dirt that's already here. As it happens like this, as it kind of gets closer to the edge here, you can, again, cantilever it out a little bit. You don't have to do every single piece of stone on the edge. You can, it gets this kind of interesting kind of basalt-like column atmosphere. If you've ever been to Iceland and seen that, kind of looks like that. If you have it all, stone or deep slate or something that might give it like a good darker color. Every single one of these you don't need to do. But as we get, to emphasize that randomness, like I said, nature is not always the same. You kind of need to show it as being something a little bit different. So we have a lot of things that are protruding out at this specific block height. So maybe we'd add a little bit of change right there and there. I'm just going to keep going around this outside edge. And making this meet. An easy way to start, if you're not afraid of using a bunch of blocks, is to just, go down in tiers. Every single block that you do here, just making it go, maybe meeting it there so that it has a little bit of that random energy again and again, because the stone is there. It's our support block. We need this to be what is meeting the ground. I'm not really speaking very clearly at this point. This is the off-script section, as I'm sure you could probably guess, but you get the idea. So we can just keep going around and doing this on all sides. All right, my friends, if you've been following along in your own builds, if you've been watching, you'll know we just finished step 5. We filled in these layers between the first underside with the core lines, just a little bit on the top. And now we're moving on to step 6, which is attenuating all these lines that we're creating through the process of actually making this thing to those core lines. So of course, the core of your build isn't going to completely come down to those core lines and look like a pencil. Unless you want that, that's totally fine. Wouldn't look completely physically realistic, but if you want some magical component to your build, the world is your oyster and more power to you. But what I mean by that is that you want to try to drag every single line kind of so that they're touching at least one or two of your core lines as they meet the ground or the structure that you're building off of, because that will give you a really, really solid sense of structure, a really, really solid sense of strength in the supporting foundation of this build. So here's one line I think I can do pretty easily here. I kind of want to take this section down to this point, or at least as close as I can get to that. So I'm going to take it from here, go a little bit down here, split it there, and maybe meet it right beside, so that we know at least our base will be 2 blocks wide. And actually, let's make a bigger one over here. You know, this one, might want to give this area a little bit more support ideas. So I'm going to bring this one down here and remove this stone to give it more heft as it meets the earth. So if you're looking at these steps and trying to contrast them from the previous step to this one, think of this one as doing this in a horizontal mindset. You're thinking of how the blocks are connecting horizontally. And then as soon as that curve reaches, more than 45%, or as soon as your build becomes more of like a tower shape, you're building up to it, you're trying to get that stuff. You're thinking vertically. And then you want to be thinking about where those points are going to meet on the ground, and you're building down to it. So we were thinking horizontally. Now we're thinking just a little bit more vertically as we go down, and make these lines meet a little bit, make it feel, again, like it's curving. Maybe you want to emphasize this curve a little bit more. See, now that, to me, this is something where I did an overstep, and we can edit this probably. Because this now looks a little bit too formulaic. It looks like it's going down at a 45-degree angle, and we really need to emphasize those curves if we want this to be something that feels like it's going down that way. So now I think I'm going to bulk up the structure a little bit. I think I was maybe a little bit misguided in my initial intention to make this cantilever out so much this way, and I really needed to bulk up this side. Again, you can realize these things as you're going and change them in the future. So this side seems like an easy fix right here. We can make this piece, let's get some more stone, make this piece meet here, maybe cut in a little bit here, but then pull it out a little bit like that to give it a little bit more weight again. Here's a section that we can actually use a little band-aid, something that I used a little bit over there. As you can see, these little stepping stone kind of platforms down. We can take some of our dirt and use it as a new foundation and kind of bring this out just a little bit. So now we have this secondary platform right here, and we can do a micro scale of the same thing we're doing here. We can take that underside layer, and we can bring this straight down into the earth right here. And this is actually a really, really good way to save your kind of structure, or save your intent behind a build without actually changing that much about what you're doing. You're still having this meet here, but this is just a little bit of an extra area. Maybe you can put some foliage there. Maybe you can put some trees, some greenery, make it look a little bit nice. Maybe even a tiny little structure that people can access with a little staircase. Look at what the haze is doing to me right now. All these potential ideas just from this one little tiny addition. So truly, the haze is your friend. Changing priorities is your friend. Because with those changing priorities, we can easily make something even more unique and more suited for the landscape. As you can see here, this whole section internally here is actually pretty hollow. This is an insane area of this map, and I'm thinking, once this is done, maybe I could have a little entrance to a trail that spirals all the way down along the edges here. And goes into another cavern. I've already made something kind of analogous to that over here. I'll throw some footage of that on the screen right now. But as you can see, using this idea of the haze and your shifting focus as you're making a build is really helpful for making something truly unique to the environment that you're building in. And if this is your goal, if your goal is to make interesting things that fit the environment that you're trying to create, you really need to be focused on letting the environment and letting what's already been created by the game for you to kind of influence your decisions. So there's a little sub-step, but you need to, if you're leaving void space in here, you need to light it up. There's nothing more immersion breaking than walking around an environment and seeing that subtitle that a zombie is groaning or skeletons, chortling around. Because it feels like it's not a place, it's not a safe place. And if you're building out a city, if you're building out something like that, you got to make sure that it feels like a safe place to be. So I'm continuing over here, filling in this side, filling in these spaces that were left open from this cantilevered edge. I'm going to bulk up this side a little bit more even. Like I was saying, I think it needs a little bit more perceived weight to kind of be able to hold itself up in the shape that I'm currently building it in. So I'm going to add some more layers here and give it that heft that it needs. I'm very quickly running a little low on stone, but that's okay. The server does have an economy. The IP is in the description if you're interested in playing on it yourself. There's a lot of cool people, a lot of cool stuff to be seen, a lot of cool places to be explored. And with that said, I think we're actually done with this section. So again, if you want to check out the server, IP is in the description, but let's move on to the next step. So for step 7, what I would say is finish the structure, but that might sound a little bit like the rest of the owl, if you're familiar with that joke. So let me actually go sleep first so that we get a little bit more light, and then I'll head back and finish this part. Okay, so as we're flying back, like I was saying, ooh, very pretty. But like I was saying, if you haven't finished the structure, if it doesn't meet the ground in all locations, make sure that happens. Again, we can make some macro edits later, we can make some micro edits later, anything like that. But make sure your structure at least touches the ground wherever it can. Make sure that stone goes all the way down wherever it is. And then once you've done that, once it's touching the ground everywhere, then you can make some edits to the macrostructure. What I mean by that is the entire concept of the build. You can widen it a little bit, you can make it look a little bit different, and that really comes down to the work that you've already done at this point. Right now you're making the top of it actually match the work that you just did. So before we were making this bottom work match the top, now we're going to go the other way. We're going to make the top match the bottom, match what we've done down here. But there's something that's been irking me just a little bit about this section over here. It feels like it should even go maybe a little bit further out. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to throw stone underneath those new blocks, and then make a little bit of edits to this part down here to make sure that this blends in the same kind of way. I could even remove this part, make this part down here the same kind of platform like we did up there. So this is what I mean by macro structure. It's really just like, what could you be doing to make your build even, fit into the landscape just that much more? If you're doing something like this, I would really heavily suggest adding tiny platforms like this, just to make it a little bit more integrated. This doesn't look like it's sticking out like a sore thumb. It really looks like it might be actually generated by, physical activity in the Minecraft world that you're playing in. So here I'm going to take these up all the way. You might be thinking like, wow, having one block of grass everywhere doesn't look very natural. And it doesn't. And we will get to that in the next step, actually. But good observation. Good on you. You get a cookie. And let's actually probably move on to that next step now. I don't really want to do much over here right now. Again, every terraforming project is just a different size of the same project. So if you're thinking, I have a really good idea of what could go there, do it, man. Just do it. Build your thing, make it super cool, and I'll be like, wow, that's really cool. Really good job. I'm really proud of you. Babooey. All right, friends, our second to last step is bending and lipwork. So that's some words for sure. So what I mean by bending is really making the top look like it fits these slopes here a little bit more, makes kind of a gentle curve, because completely flat areas, even though they are fairly common in Minecraft, in these plain sections, down here and such, they don't really look that great. Especially if it's something on a project that you're making and that is clearly not an actual part of the game. So for this, we take our dirt, and we think, do I want this whole thing to kind of slope gently into this side, or do I want this to slope down and then this to lip up a little bit? You know, kind of raise itself up just that much more. And I think I really kind of want that lip. And what that actually might do is project the end of this a little bit out even more. So we can add this part here or something, just something easy. Looks kind of weird. Looks like a banana, actually. Wait, but if we take this down then a little bit and cover up a little bit what we did before, totally fine. Don't worry about it. It's just a rough draft, like I've said. We can go like that, maybe add a little bit more to imply non-axis, you know, bump in the structure, because that would maybe look a little bit weird. And then maybe just a little bit more on the very end, just like that. Then we can even take out a little bit of this on the bottom. And as you can see, as we're doing this, it does look a little bit like it's lipping up just a hair, just a skosh, right? And we can even extend this back a little bit, back as far as possible to this wall that we're trying to connect this to make it so that this whole thing has a little bit more of a gentle curve in this specific direction. And again, what that's going to do is really integrate the fake structure, or the terraform structure, in more with this existing structure. And when this turns to grass, it's going to look even better. It's going to look great. We can do this a little bit. Maybe even extend this out just a little bit more. Just to give that illusion a little bit more weight. Again, like I've said, none of your work up to this point is permanent, is concrete. This is Minecraft. You can really do whatever you'd like. And if something doesn't look good, change it later. Don't worry about it. This is going to look a lot better once that grass spreads just a skosh. And we will do our own grass in the next stage. But this is the bending. This is the bending that I'm looking for. So let's throw this back underneath, just like so. Every dirt block must have a supporting block next to it, as we have already discussed. And now, once we've finished up this part, we can get into the lip work. Right now, we just did the bending, and the lip work is actually where this stone and grass meet. We want to make this a little bit more natural. But we can see here, you know, we've got 3 dirt and then 2 dirt, and then whoa, it comes to 1 dirt, and then the peninsula happens, right? So we kind of have this secondary line. What's really important in terraforming is that you have multiple lines kind of giving the same effect. So here we have, you know, this big macro line of the sculpture, you know, giving this effect, and we can have internal lines enforcing that effect with internal curves. So wherever we have multiple dirt already here, we can take this shovel, try to choose something that's not on a corner so you don't have a harsh kind of shift like this that doesn't look quite as good as choosing something like this where you can see the shift happen, in my humble opinion. Replace that, maybe even add a dirt there to give a little bit more blending with that lip work. Can come around here, add 1 there. This has already been done for us there, so we can take this up here, make this a double as it comes into here, and then this comes as a double there, but we should probably enforce this just a little bit more, so we can add 1 there. And this internal line, this secondary line, does the same thing to really pull focus towards the structure itself. So where it comes over here, where it gets a little bit closer to the earth here, we can add in a couple there. We can remove some from right here where it gets a little bit more precipitous, and even add it in right there so that the curve meets the earth itself. We have some voids back here. Let me actually light those up so you don't get any baby zombies or spiders spawning. And actually replace some of these blocks to make this curve a little bit more gentle for these new structure pieces that we just added. Yeah, so we've got this secondary internal curve that goes straight through there. We've got this curve here. We've got the main curve on the top. That is 3 curves, all basically giving us the same directional information where we should be pointing our eyes. And this is truly what we're looking for in the terraforming game. Already you might be saying like, wow, that looks pretty good. It doesn't look fully integrated with the terrain yet, of course. And we've still got some areas over here that we can work on a little bit. Especially here when it meets the real kind of generation of the thickness of the dirt here. So we can kind of make this even a little stronger of like a, hey, look, this is changing now into this new section. We can even add a couple here where I was talking about that before. But obviously over here, we haven't done anything there, so we don't have to worry about it. So once we've done that, once we've finished up this Lipwork, once we've bent the macro structure kind of up into what we've been doing here, of course, we can always do more work on that later, but this is just a short tutorial so you can see this process. We can move on to the next step, which in my humble opinion is the best and potentially the most fun. You'll see. If you've ever heard any jokes about music producers, you might have heard, add reverb. It's kind of a joke to like glue things together because novice producers think that if you just throw reverb on stuff, it'll make it work out. It'll make the sound good in the context of the song. And honestly, a lot of times it's true, which is also why this I kind of call the Minecrafter's reverb, and that's vegetation, Bonemeal, trees, all kinds of stuff like that. It gives the hard edges of your blocks a little bit of a fuzzy kind of edge to it, a little bit more natural. But the problem with the vegetation stage is that it might take a while because you need to wait for your dirt or grass to actually spread. If you're building with grass, more power to you. Unfortunately, my shovel does not have silk touch, so I don't have a massive amount of grass lying around. I can only, transport grass with my pickaxe. Which is totally fine, but that is one of the trade-offs of not having silk touch on your shovel. But what I can show you while that stuff is spreading on over there is ideas for how this vegetation will work. So of course, as you know, if you right-click grass, a bunch of vegetation is going to spawn, a bunch of different kinds. These tall grasses, these short grasses, some of these flowers, some of these flowers, some of those flowers, different kinds of flowers. Of course, you can also bone meal saplings to make them grow. That's, of course, how these trees are here. And whenever you're doing stuff like this, you want the trees that you're adding and the vegetation that you're adding to match the overall vibe of your city. For this vibe, what I like doing is trying to bone meal close to the center of where I have my paths and then remove a lot of it so only the fringe pieces remain. I kind of think of it like not many people are stepping here, so the grass is still there. You can kind of think of it like convenience paths on a university campus. There are tons of those everywhere if you've ever been on a uni campus or if you're a current student, where, these are the convenient paths, so the grass has been, completely worn away and the tall grass only remains where people aren't really walking that often. Flowers, things like that, put them on the sides of the paths. Put your trees to the sides of the paths. Try to make big trees closer to the paths so that you know that they're going to actually hang over your paths. And try to match your trees with the vegetation of the surrounding area. So here, this is a just regular forest biome. This is the initial kind of conditions of all this stuff when I started building it. So even though I'm using these flowering azaleas too, I made that a conscious decision because of the pinkish purplish flowers with this netherwood crimson wood palette. Again, for this kind of natural style of vegetation and tree generation and things like that, don't make your trees over here. And the reason for that is that even though it would look really cool, of course, I say don't. Do whatever you want. It's not, I'm not the Minecraft police, but I would refrain from putting my trees over here because it doesn't really look real. It doesn't look like the roots would have enough room to spread. It doesn't look like this would be able to support that kind of weight. put them where they're closer to the earth, closer to the points where it goes kind of close to straight down, where we put those vertical core lines. Because if we're putting them closer to here, we'll have more of a structured look to it, even subconsciously. Just by looking around this kind of area, people will see all these trees kind of in this area close to the edge. I don't have any plans for paths here right now, so I'm just filling it up with trees and vegetation. But if they see this stuff here, they know that, there's enough weight there to support those trees, even though we all know trees can spawn on floating islands and stuff. But there's something subconscious that humans do, kind of like with faces, to kind of justify what they're seeing and what they're hearing. Think of the generation of these systems like poetry. Even if you're not a poet, this is something I tell my students a lot, actually. Even if you don't know the intent you had behind the words that you're writing, if it seems like gibberish to you, if it seems like it's funny, if it seems like it doesn't make any sense, whoever's reading that work, they don't know who you are. They don't know whose work it is. If it's one of your friends, sure, whatever. But other people reading that work, they don't know who you are. They don't know what type of person you are. And they're trying to justify whatever choices were made through their lens as a person. So if you see a bunch of trees here, you subconsciously are going to be thinking like, oh, there's enough weight to hold those trees up. Even though, as we know, like I was saying, I'm not going to waste my bone meal on that one. Even though, like we were saying, it doesn't matter. In Minecraft, it doesn't matter. But when we're terraforming, we're trying to make things look natural. We're trying to make them look like they could exist in this world, in any world. So it's important to make the structure hold. It's important to make sure that all of the things that we're doing actually feel like they have a connection to something we might see in the real world. Even though it's Minecraft, we all know it's Minecraft. It's not the real world. But that's not the point. The point is that we're terraforming. We're making cool things. And by doing that, we're going to make some interesting stuff. All right, so I've gone ahead and grown all these trees. Seeing them from over there, they're definitely going to need a little bit of light, so I'm going to hide some torches behind them to illuminate this area. Again, doesn't have to look completely natural. It can look exactly how you want it to look, and this is how I want it to look. Now here, the grass is spreading a little bit more, so we can start right-clicking, getting down this vegetation. Again, don't put it everywhere. Make it look a little bit more random than you would see it if you just spammed your bone meal everywhere. Even kind of add it on the sides where you haven't actually done anything yet to really blend in the edited terrain with the stuff that you've already done. Maybe even down here, because we can see this from one angle. Maybe even over here. Throw some of these down there. Throw some of these on this level as well. And that, again, we're going to need to wait for that to spread completely to really get that illusion 100%. But that is looking pretty great. Just that one little cap, like I said, it's the reverb, it's the Minecrafter's reverb. It really makes it come together in a different way. It makes the edges look a little bit fuzzy. It makes it look like it has a little bit more heft to it. And like I said, we're viewing it through our lens of being humans, not just Minecrafters, and that looks like it could hold up all that weight. A tree over here, maybe not, maybe not. All right, friends, that basically is going to do it. There's our build in the background there. We can see it in all its glorious majesty behind my face. And that's really it. That's all there is to it. I'm seeing in the background here that there could be a couple more edits made to this specific viewpoint to kind of give it that curve a little bit, because it kind of looks like an S curve right now. But from most other viewpoints, this is looking really, really fantastic. I'm really happy I got to make a video, a tutorial of some kind, because I've been sinking a lot of work, sinking a lot of time into these kind of terraforming projects. And it's fun to show other people a little bit about what that's looking like. To get an arch like this, you would really just do the same thing, but from both sides and make them meet in the middle. You can kind of imagine an arch if I doubled this image right here. You get the idea. But thanks for watching. I really appreciate you watching. Evening Reverie, signing off. Maybe I'll make another video soon. Maybe I'll make a little build walkthrough of the other kinds of stuff I've been doing here. But come join the server. Come hang out. build some cool stuff, and set a warp to it so I can come see. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.